Trouble with the ticket there. Okay, so I'm going to slide in like this, and this is the first time I'm sliding in for a start. But James, thanks for doing this. Like I said yesterday, obviously this is part two. In the chat yesterday with Murray, I said to everyone there was like a two-part to this one. I wanted to come down Monday, Tuesday on the way down to Durban and stay over, but with the voting and that, everything changed. So obviously I'm rushing through on the way back home, but it was quite nice that Murray was in Durban with me, so I got to at least catch up with him. And like you mentioned just now, he's the marketer, like, you know, proper old school marketer. So it was good to get Murray's marketing input and the stories he had. But I wanted to meet, and obviously with my cousin being here as a teacher, Matt suggested that you would also be really, really good for this because of your history. Like Murray said, I've told you just now, so that you'll talk and tell all the stories, which I think is wonderful. I'm also a talker, which is great, and I've explained to you why I'm doing this, to help schools, and just it's not an official fancy structure yet. I do hope to get it to that one day, but I think I'm trying to keep it raw and real. So yeah, you can you don't have to formally introduce yourself. I'll put up on social media, when I tag it, I put your name in and where we're at, so you don't have to introduce yourself. You can if you want to, but I'd like to find out a bit more about yourself. I mean, we were chatting just now, you're a physio by trade, and you sound like you've got quite an interesting story yourself.
I've got a few stories. This is a bit of a circle of life story for me because I was lucky enough to come here to school many years ago. I was at Highbury Prep School, and my brother had come here. My folks knew the headmaster who had started, moved down from Rhodesia, become Zim, and family friends with my folks, or my mom, and she sent my brother here, and then I guess I just followed suit. So I was lucky enough to come here, and I loved it. I guess you don't know much else as a youngster, and I realised I was very lucky, but I kind of only also realised after I left how lucky I had been. I always try to give everything the best shot I could, but again, you only realise sometimes when you leave school how lucky you have been. So that was a bit of a thing for me, and I went off, and I was always keen on the medical stuff. I was more than keen on the sports stuff, and I guess for me, I got a history of medical folk. My grandpa had been a surgeon, South African, first qualified South African surgeon, qualified in 1901.
Wow.
And I'd always had medical people in the family, so it was always a case of doing something along those lines, and I figured that physio was a quicker route into working in sport. So that's why I went off and did that, and was up at Wits, lucky enough to work with the Wits Rugby Club, and then I got an opportunity to shadow Evan Speechley, who was also Wits physio.
So Springbok Springbok physio.
So he was the Springbok physio at the time, as well as the Transvaal physio, and I spent 2 years shadowing him, which was an amazing experience. He was a really great guy, and even though I was obviously a Natal fan, I got to work with Transvaal, and it was an amazing period there, working with the likes of Francois Pino, Lee Schmidt, and the whole, basically Henny LaRue, half a Springbok team at the time. And then when I graduated, then I got an offer to go and work for a guy who sort of got me interested in physio as a school kid. It helped me out with physio when I was here. Ex-Hilton boy, actually, Greg McKenzie is his name, and he offered me a job in Durban, and I was actually looking at going back into medicine into third year to start studying. But then when I got this job, for me, to become a physio for the Natal rugby team wasn't Sharks, and guys like Paul Bartman was one of my heroes, Andre Joubert. We had an amazing team, Jeremy Thompson.
It was late 96, 97, right?
End of 94 I joined them. So for me it was like I couldn't say no to it. It was like asking a Man U fan to go and work for Alex Ferguson. And Ian McIntosh had also been like a big role model for me. In fact, he had come to Michaelhouse when I was a new boy in '86. And I remember saying to my mates after he'd done this coaching clinic here, I thought, like, this guy's just great, and I said, we're going to win the Currie Cup with that guy one day. We were in the B section at that time, and they said, you're smoking something, which I wasn't, but I was actually right. And a few years later, we won the Currie Cup with him, and then I got a chance to go and work under him at the Sharks for 4 years, or Natal. I became the Sharks when I was there. we actually had a vote when we were there as to what the staff wanted to call the team.
And Banana Boys and all
They were the Banana
names.
Boys.
Yeah, it was the nickname, yeah.
Yeah, we had a vote, and I voted to call them the Rhinos, and I was outvoted Sharks. So I was only I could say the
Rhinos, yeah,
So
okay.
they became the Sharks 97 when I was there, 97.
Yeah, that sounds so.
And then basically worked there for another couple of years, and then another thing I discovered I loved was snow skiing. So I'd been working at the Sharks for a few years, and I was lucky enough to go on these overseas tours, which were amazing. So I'd been to Ireland 1 year with the Natal Dunkers. The following year I went on tour with the Natal the 21s, and then my sister was living in the UK and stayed over there, and we went skiing. And yeah, I loved it. And then I was chatting to a patient of mine in Durban saying, I just love this thing. And they said, why don't you consider going working in Europe? And I was like, geez, how do you do that? So she actually arranged me an interview with the guy from Beachcomber who came down to Durban and came for an interview in Durban. I mean, I don't know how you interview someone about like
Skiing from Durban.
Yeah. So he said, can you ski? I said, brilliantly. So I said, can you get on a black run? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So anyway, he came and he actually did the interview after rugby practice at Kings Park.
Wow.
And I did a bit of a sneaky because I said, oh, so he's a bit of a Transvaal fan. But I said, who's your favourite Natal player? And he said, Ollie Leroux. So I got Ollie to come over and say, how's it? And
nice.
Ollie actually gave him a signed Natal jersey.
So you had the job in the
Got
bag.
the job sorted.
Yeah.
And,
Punch your world of marketing.
there we go. So Ollie helped organise me a job, and I gave me a job. We went off to Europe at the end of '98 and spent 4 months working in Austria on a ski resort, which was amazing, with Beachcomber there, which was a wonderful experience. And then off to the UK after that, to find work in the summer, and that's when I landed up spending 14 years there. So nearly 14 years, and worked as a physio, worked a couple of years at London Irish, started my own physio practice in Putney originally, and started coaching there, and that was my beginning of my coaching career, which was Bank in England, which is a lovely club there. It's actually where they have the Wimbledon qualifiers.
Wow.
So it's amazing grounds, and started coaching there, and then built up my practice and moved to Wimbledon, and the practice actually still runs there. So we came back 10 years ago, but it's still running, like started in 2004, still running, what's that, you do the math, 17 years later.
Yeah.
So it still exists there today. Physio SW19 we called it.
Wow.
And so it's still running, but what happened is I'd met my missus there, and we had a couple of kids, and I guess I just decided one day I wanted them to grow up and live a bit of South African life like we had, and the folks were getting old and struggling a bit, and I just thought I want them to get to know Granny and Grandpa and their cousins and stuff. And funny story, because we'd been out to the Eastern Cape. We used to go to a place called Kenton in the Eastern Cape. Yeah. So we were driving through PE, and my missus went into the shops and came to the shops and said, yes, I could never live here, wind's blowing and everything's like it's dusty and wind blowing and all the rest. And we passed through PE, went to Kenton for a little bit of a holiday, about a week or so, went back to the UK, and I'd actually bumped into Robbie Kempson before that, at the end of the year before, just for the holiday. He'd come over on the SA Legends tour, and I'd helped them with physio and stuff there. And then he got hold of me just when we got back to the UK and said, listen, he's involved with the Kings, and they're looking for a physio, and they'll come and sort of head up the medical thing there. And he said, would you be keen? And I actually replied on email, and I pressed send as I went on the underground, and it didn't send, but I had replied saying no. My missus said she could never live there, and I wasn't going to go where she doesn't want to go. And we were happy in the UK. I got home and I told her about this, and she said, well, what did you say? I said, no, we didn't want to go there, and we're happy here. So she said, why don't you just ask more, So I asked a few questions, and we just thought, stuff it, you only live once, and we ended up going back to PE, and I ended up working for the Kings for a couple of years. Amazing experience. It obviously, it wasn't the Sharks for me, but what I learned about my time there is actually it doesn't matter what badge you wear, it's the people that wear the badge, or the people that wear the jersey that the badge is on. And met some amazing people, wonderful players. A lot of them have been chucked out by other unions after double ACL ops and shoulder ops and stuff like that, but they were sort of nursed back to health. Got them playing, and we got into the Super Rugby season, had an amazing season. Obviously we did get relegated, we lost to the Lions in the knockouts, but it was just in a wonderful couple of years, and met some incredible people, one of which is actually coaching the All Blacks now. He's the All Blacks attack coach. So he was one of the guys, and so many other friends I've kept comms with along the way, and some of them playing international rugby elsewhere. So.
And that was like the birth of Mapimpi and and Lionel Cronje, and was it just before they?
No, that was the second stint. So
Oh,
what
the
happens?
second
We got
one. Oh, okay.
relegated, and then I actually got a call from Brendan Fenter, who I'd worked with at London Irish,
Yes.
and also in my first medical practice, he used to work there. And he asked me about a couple of players. One was SPM Murray, and he asked me about him, and then he said, "What are your plans?" And I said, "Well, we just carry on. We're happy here, and it doesn't matter if we're in the B section or whatever." And he said, "Would you be keen to come to the Sharks?" And I'm like, so obviously it's my team and stuff. But I said, "We're very happy." And I said, "To be honest, my mate's actually the Sharks physio, and I'm not going there to replace my mate." He said, "No, I don't want you to be the physio. I actually want you to help coaching." And I was like, "Wow, okay, tell me more." And he said, "Because you're a physio, you can run touchline like a Jacques Minova did, but I want to train you up as my defence coach to work with the Sharks." And I was like, that's like a dream job for me.
Yeah.
So I actually moved back to Durban, and I spent 2013 Currie Cup working with him. A wonderful experience, and obviously I was coached amateur club rugby in the UK. London Division 1, so it wasn't Super Rugby or Currie Cup. So he started me with very basic stuff, a bit like Mr. Miyagi, wax on, wax off. And it was an incredible learning experience. And my family were all in the Eastern Cape, so I'd spend every Sunday studying up and analysing games, and it was an amazing experience. But the first job he gave me is he said, "You've got a couple of these big shot players, but I want them to leg tackle, and they're all upper body hitting," you see, which is a bit of a thing that crept in after that Scott Gibbs era when the Lions came out. So you had guys like, they were amazing players, and you had Keegan Daniel and John Daisel and Willem Alberts, and although Willem would smack you wherever, but even likes of Bismarck, they were massive upper body hitters, and he said, "I want them to learn to leg tackle." So I had to go and study basically their technique and try and help me on. It's a hell of a thing when you're like a social rugby player that's been a physio and coached an amateur rugby team to go to Bismarck and say, let's talk about your tackle technique, So anyway, they were incredible guys, and it was I keep saying amazing. It was an amazing working experience with such, like, sort of, let's call them top end athletes and competitors and winners. They're all bright guys that have, they've played hard, they've studied hard, they're incredibly driven to perform, and they were so receptive to trying to learn and improve. So I was very lucky to work with those guys, and Brendan actually left at the end of the year, and Jake White took over, and although Jake basically said to me in 9 certain terms, I'll be doing the defence here, I can't blame Jake, he's done a bit more than me. So he said, "But if you're happy to hang around and pick up scraps and learn a little bit, then you're welcome to carry on." And here's my daughter coming to say hello. Hello, my girl. I'm just doing an interview, Manunu. This is Ian. This is my daughter, Layla.
Hello, Layla. How are you? You want to be in the screen?
We're being recorded, Manunu. So that's Layla. So this is one of the people I dragged back from London with me.
Oh, nice.
So anyway, I basically got to carry on working with Jake, which was a wonderful learning experience. And he asked me what I'd done under Brendan, and then he said, "Would you carry on with that, and would you mind doing a few other things?" So Mr. Miyagi continued, and then he gave me the under 19s team to work with in the Currie Cup. So carried on working there, and then ran the under 19s Currie Cup. Ran the under 19s Currie Cup, and again it was an incredible experience for me. But it was tricky because my family were actually much happier in the Eastern Cape, and they went to a really nice school down there called Woodridge.
You had Woodridge. Did you work at Woodridge?
They were at Woodridge,
a lovely school.
And they actually all wanted to go back. And then Jake actually left at the end of that year, and I just realised you can't keep in a job like that. You're very reliant on who's your head coach. And I learned a hell of a lot off him. But then he leaves, and the next guy comes in.
You got to rebuild yourself all over again. That's tiring.
And then the Kings gave me this 5-year gig as the head of high performance, and it was a wonderful job. And I said it's very easy for me to go back. And I'd sort of realised, a lot of the guys from the Sharks that I already worked with were already leaving and stuff. So you do gain build relationships with people, but you suddenly realise, as much as I loved it there, and I mean, having guys like the Dupree twins coming through, little flower called Innocent Radebi, a wonderful player. So I mean, I was working with these guys, and they were fantastic. But the people come and people go, and I realised, I've got to put the family first. So I moved back to the Eastern Cape, and unfortunately, there I got to work with Carlos Spencer, which was incredible. I said, I do have to do some sort of form of coaching. I can't only be doing medical stuff. And they said, well, you can work a bit with Carlos with the skill development and work it into the rehab. of players. So basically, I helped like injured guys as well as doing the skill stuff with him, or basically shadowing that, because I don't think you can get much better than him.
Yeah, he was like Stacey Jones in rugby league and Carlos Spencer in rugby union at the time, with the two epitomes of skill.
Yeah, I mean, he's incredible and like a genius in a way. He often just did stuff. I'm not sure he
off the cuff
knew how to explain it, but he just was a freak. He just did amazing stuff. So to sit and watch this guy and pick up tips off him was incredible.
Yeah.
And then unfortunately they went bust, and it was 6 months into a 5-year contract, and I was left a bit high and dry, and basically I worked out the rest of the year.
Okay.
And a lot of guys are playing and not being paid, and it was a terrible time for people that they rely on being paid, and you've got a family and you've got to pay your Woodridge fees.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So anyway, we had a mortgage, and so it was tough, emotionally and financially. Again, incredible people, the likes of Tim Whitehead, Ronnie Cook.
Yeah.
These are wonderful human beings. We were like all in it together, and we played through to the end of the Currie Cup, and then basically everyone just disappeared. Guys like David Bulbring going to Japan, Vupi van der Walt, he went to Japan, actually playing Japan. Shane Gates played for Japan. So these guys just be like scatterings, Johnny Clegg.
Yeah, exactly.
So they all just disappeared everywhere to go and earn a living, and we stayed there, and I started my own physio practice. And a long story short, I've been working there on my own at home in a little practice, and my wife luckily kept her job and kept going. And then I got a call from Michaelhouse saying, listen, we'd like to chat. And I said, well, tell me more. So they said they want to sort of revamp their rugby program a bit. Things weren't going quite as well as they'd liked, and having come off an amazing 2015 year, I think things had slipped a bit. And this is, as you know, a competitive game. Other schools doing better for whatever reasons, and if you're losing, then you're seen as an inferior school. So it was kind of an opportunity to try and redo things differently here. And they also said, I know you're not a teacher, but can you offer anything else? And I said, well, I'm happy to help with the medical stuff as well, because I can do that. And I've done it in different places. So basically, the offer came midway through 2017, and I started in January 18. So that's your long story for a short question.
Yeah, but what's amazing there, and you started in the beginning of that by saying as a child in school, you don't realize what you have. Until after, it's almost like only when you leave school do you realize that you're at school. You got more so in an environment like this. I mean, we're sitting here in this amazing high performance center where you can hear the guys playing downstairs with the weights. It's amazing, and they every single day of their life while they're here, apart from school holidays or whatever, they are with their mates. They're learning from passionate people who want to be here. They get to play with the best toys. The weights, the likes, and then when you leave it, that kind of all disappears. So, I mean, again, going back to your time here now, I mean, how did you find coming to monastic school and being, because from what I understand, there's no weekly boarders. This is you're here for the term and that. Transitioning into, I suppose, going to Wits, like you said, it would be easy for you because now you've been away from home, you're used to it. Do you find that that's like an advantage? Do you see the boys coming in, and you were interviewing earlier a family that I know, and they're not from a monastic school or a school with a boarding establishment. How do you find that was for you, and do you see it changing boys that might have come not from that environment and how they integrate? And
it's a very interesting question, and I do think things are very different. So I went to boarding school in what would have been standard 5, so I boarded last 2 years in my primary school.
Okay.
And my brother went in standard 1. My dad went, I think, in class 2. So
it's early.
That is very early. Doesn't make it all right. I think that's probably a bit early, but they lived on a farm outside Witbank.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to tell, because I think a lot of kids nowadays are not used to boarding because they don't. We get quite a few kids coming in from like Nottingham Road, Clifton Notties, Orchard Wallace, that have they're farming from Coxstate to Copo, wherever it might be, even into the Free State and that, and they come boarding us, so they're quite used to it.
Yeah.
But you get a lot of kids that come in that aren't used to it. So for me, I had no problem coming to boarding school because I'd already been boarding.
Yes.
Obviously you learn, at prep school now you're a main oak, and now you rock up and you're not a main oak, so there's always a bit of a reboot.
Yeah.
But in terms of kids coming into high school, it is a bit of a shock for some. Without sounding like an old man, I was in Highbury, and I could either take the bus home, or I could get lift club home, or sometimes I'd run home.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed my running, and I also realised that my old lady gave me like £1 or 50 cents.
You're not going to waste on the bus.
Yeah, I can
Bus
grab
and
a
break.
Super C and,
Yeah,
a,
exactly.
and a chappy or whatever,
Yeah.
and then you run home. And I had a mate who lived nearby, so he would take my backpack, front back, you know, and then he'd take his and mine, and then I would run
Nice.
with him home. But so, you know, remember that's very different. Like you're obviously from Joburg, and
Yes.
you wouldn't have your kid ride on his own to his mate's house.
Not anymore.
You wouldn't probably have him, you know, run around on his own. So for me to do that, it was normal. So quite independent. But a lot of kids now, it's a big thing for me, and it's also one of the things I think we're really good at here is that, you know, you got to work your way out where your classroom is. You got to know, you know, where the sports field is. And for a lot of kids, that they don't do that, and their life is only what's right in front of them.
Yeah.
And I believe that a lot of the stuff that's been invented nowadays has been by people that
And
have the
been
imagination and have the ability to look. I always say, so who's the first guy to climb Mount Everest besides Tenzing?
Yeah.
Who's he?
Edmund Hillary.
Yes. So was he brought up in the Netherlands, or was
No.
he brought up below the Southern Alps?
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't in the Netherlands?
No,
No, it was the Alps.
He was brought up in New Zealand, and he's grown up with
Looking
mountain
at
ranges
mountains.
around. So he wants to go up and have a look. You see?
Yeah.
So I'm trick questioning you, but you know, if you never look beyond your screen, or you never look in front of the headrest of the
Yeah.
mom's Range Rover or whatever it is, you're not going to know. Like you ask your kid, how do you give me directions to get to school? They won't know,
Yeah.
because they just sit in the car. And I think a lot of it is when you come here, you do learn different things, and boarding is quite a thing now. You've got your own room, and you've probably got your own PlayStation in your room, and you've got your own probably games to play. Now you're going to sit in a room, and there's 6 other oaks there. One's chucking his dirty socks at you. The other one's, you know, hoying you with his rugby boot, and the other squirting water in you, or shaving cream, maybe not that, but
Yeah.
you know, it's different. Now you've got to get on with people, and it also teaches you different things.
Yeah.
But certainly, I think coming here teaches you to get on with other people, and if you don't get on with them, how to deal with them, which is a life skill, and also it teaches you how to organise your life and get places. Mom's not checking your homework. She's not checking your bag to make sure you've got the right
You have
books
to
to
be
take to
accountable
class.
for yourself, basically.
Yeah, you're not getting mom to pack your lunchbox. If you skip lunch or whatever, you're hungry by the afternoon. So you need to learn these life skills, and I think that's one of the things that we're really lucky with here. And I think it's probably even more exaggerated now. I think let's say a gap might have opened up between schools now, and I think we're very lucky that we have to think and we have to do these things for ourselves and find our own way around, because I think that's a part of a life skill that you learn in a place like this.
Yeah, you've hit like a real like not a point that I was chatting earlier with someone, and we felt that we were just talking about the current climate, like you said, the kids on their devices, and the devices are literally bringing us all into this entire environment. But what you spoke about there is exactly, I didn't even think of it like you've just described it now, because earlier on we were talking about how critical it is for conversations to happen between people, rather than going on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook and making a comment about someone, and that person's defenseless. You have no feeling that what you say to them, so you could be damaging them, but you don't actually care because you're doing it to the device, not to them.
Yeah.
But 9 times out of 10, if you pull those two people together in a room and they have a conversation, they won't say those same things to each other because they're human.
Yes.
And what you spoke about there is just so important, because you said here in this environment you have to look after yourself, but at the same time you're accountable to those around you. Like I said, the guy's throwing socks at you or shaving cream or whatever. And that's learning to engage with another human being and multiple human beings, and those life skills. You know, you're right, you live in Johannesburg and it's a different type of life skill you're learning. But I drive in here earlier, and you know, as I pull through the gate, 2 young boys run past going for a jog. You know, and that my children don't get to jog on the street unless I run with them. And that's a sore point, because we grew up also running in the streets, and
what you should be able to
what
do,
you should be able to do. So to see kids being active and healthy like that, for me is brilliant. So yeah, and then there's the other side of that, like you said, this accountability and the society that or community here that you guys have got. What's really also special is I waited in the rector's reception area there. It's an amazing building. Like you go in there and it's stunning, and you see on the walls and you know, inside the glass there, the history of it. And I forget, I think it was the 2 lamps of the brothers that were killed. Was it Tatham brothers? And I stood there and you get goosebumps, because the lamps are so representative of the life and the light, and these 2 guys that, would have come through here as seeing life ahead of them, like the whole world was ahead of them, and they had that experience like you had here for a few years, if that, and then they were sent off to go to war, and
for someone you didn't even know and fight against someone you never heard of.
And they did it because they were brought up in a mindset that, whether it was right or wrong, but the culture and the community of wanting to help and be part of something because it was a greater cause. Yeah. I always get the sense that schools like this in South Africa bring that to the fore far greater than your average school. And I'm not belittling any school in any way, but I always find it so important. I didn't get to go to a school like this. I went to a co-ed school, and I love my school, and it's a big part of my life. But I've always felt there's a void, not a bad void, but there is a void, because we missed out on, a lot of people can miss out on the opportunity of being part of a community like this. I mean, I don't know if you want to elaborate or go further, but
I think I
never got to do it myself. But
I think the other thing is that can we pause for 1 sec? We're back.
I think we were chatting about how this community in here and the void that, or the how you see some of the guys, how it changes them, or maybe yourself or what you saw. I suppose maybe not. You came from a family that'd been through this, so you had less change to have to go through.
I also think things are different. Like as I was sort of saying earlier, maybe in the world we lived in, just more similar in different schools and that. In terms of now, I think we are very lucky and obviously very different to most schools. We have this massive ground and space where kids can roam around free, and I think that's part of the beauty of the place, is you can get to be just a young kid growing up and do things and have a bit of responsibility. And if you want to ride your bike and go and ramp off the bank somewhere, you might have a jolt 9 times and you might break your collarbone the 10th time, but I'd rather you learn that than not know it all or never do it. So it's part of it's an amazing learning experience. In terms of comparing the co-ed and boarding, obviously I can't compare there because I was an all boys boarding school. I think they each have their advantages. They certainly have more interaction with girls' school nowadays than what we had. There's sort of St Anne's, our sister school. I know they have a polar bear day where the first years get together, all these dances each year and stuff. So there's a lot more of that. So at least they do get to talk to what you call it, the fairer sex. Whereas for us, we were like sort of it was like a big scene from Braveheart when we got to the end of the school time, but yeah, so that was very different, and I think there's advantages in each school. I think one of the advantages, as I say, for me is getting to get on with people. If you look at it with Michaelhouse, we talk about the four pillars. So the one being the academic. So if you can't get that right, people won't come. Sport and culture is another, and if you rubbish at rugby, for example, people think it's a rubbish school. It might not be. The third thing for us is the religious. Obviously, not obviously, but we are the Anglican diocese school in Natal. So started by an Anglican priest from Scotland actually. So we've been the Anglican school in Natal. So it's a big part of our schooling. You don't have to be Anglican to come. You don't have to be Christian to come.
The school is.
So that's you learn and learn those principles. But the fourth thing is the key, which is the boarding, and we're all boarders. So we live here. I live here as a staff member. My son's in grade 11. He boards. He doesn't stay at home. Everyone boards. So that for me is actually the secret. So if you said what's the best part of the school, I might say the fields and the HPC. If you ask your cousin, he'll tell you the science department.
Yeah, he's very proud.
You see, he's very proud of the science department. That was built the year before this. And then if you ask, the new housemaster of Rafe House, Mr. Blue, he'll tell you Rafe House, the best part of my class. Or Miss Moffat will tell you McCormack House. It's the new fancy house. That's the best part of the school. If you ask maybe the Reverend May, he'll tell you the chapel. And I say we're actually all right, but we're actually all wrong. In my view, the best part of the school is what I call the power of people coming together. It's everything.
The spirit of it all.
So education for me is not academics. It's not sport. It's not culture. It's part of what you do, and it's an important part. But it's actually the power of us all coming together, and that for me is the most important. You learn to get on with people. You learn to make mates, and we had our 30-year reunion a couple of years ago, and I think we had 79 out of about 90 boys that came, guys from New York, guys from New Zealand, guys
all
from,
made the effort.
yeah, they all, a couple of guys didn't make it, a couple of them aren't here anymore, but 79.
That's good,
and we had an amazing time, and some of them I hadn't seen since school, but it's because of the journey that you've had, the life you've had here together, that brings it together, and I think that for me is actually probably the best part of it,
You've literally just dovetailed into something Murray said yesterday, and it's so cool. I like to see that, because he spoke of the exact same phenomenon, where how important academics and education is. And I spoke in one of the previous podcasts I did with Tom Hamilton, who's the CEO at Kalani Schools, and he also said there's the education and the academic side, but then there's the schooling side, the schooling, which encompasses all of that, and every school has its own schooling, but it's made up of everything you just mentioned. Each school has its pillars and values, but then you get this extra piece, and I think, like you said, the boarding adds that totally separate extra piece that makes it. And I feel also the history, like as these schools get older, and you get to feel that spirit within the school, and I think that comes from that schooling, like you mentioned, like you had a reunion, and that spirit of whatever you guys had from your time here is what has pulled everyone back to because they want to feel you want to feel that again, and I wish we could have like I don't know whether it was something you drank or something you took in your mouth, but to let parents and children all realize that that's what you not every school is perfect. Not every school is. There will be bad days and bad moments, and things will go wrong. But by and large, most schools that I've ever come across want exactly what you've just described now. They want to offer that to the children.
I think that's it, because I mean, you lead me on to a few things. I mean, I still remember the first team wing, the first year I got here. He got 6 A's in matric, and all he wanted to do was study medicine. And he was this brave guy, incredibly courageous, committed. I mean, he's like, his name is Michael Gomes. I don't know if I'm allowed saying his name, but I just did. But he's such a good guy, and I just I was so proud of this guy. And he was incredible for us. And he injured his knee about 2/3 way through the season. He didn't make Mattel School's trials. I thought he was best doing in the province, obviously, and hugely courageous, tiny guy, but massive heart, and got 6 A's in matric and didn't get into medicine. That was his dream, to study medicine. That's all he wanted to do, And for me, like, I felt I was devastated for that, but he's just finishing his BSc now, still hoping to get into medicine.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I hope he continues, and I hope he makes it. But actually, he might not have got out of here getting 6 A's, getting into medicine. He might have got 9 A's and not got in. But at the end of the day, he's tough, he's resilient, and he's not going to give up.
No.
And for me, that's actually sometimes more important for me, because you're right. No place is perfect. No school is perfect. If they tell you, they're talking rubbish, nothing is.
Yeah, you're right.
Warts and all, you know the good and the bad. But for me, what you're trying to do is actually you almost like if it's a sardine run or a Serengeti sort of migration, they're just there for that moment in time, passing through, which is quicker than you think. I've learned from my own son, it's 4 years out of 5, it's nearly gone. But it's that journey that you travel, and in that time you want them to be, diligent, you want them to be caring, you want them to be understanding, you want them to get on with people, you want them to do well in class, but you obviously want them to be Hilton too, and college hopefully. But at the end of the day, you want them to be the best version of themselves, and you want them to be resilient, because that's what it takes nowadays. It's tough out there, and you have to basically install that in them. It's not about the A's, I don't believe. If you don't get the A's, you're in trouble, but it's not about the A's, because even my man Michael, he didn't get into what he wanted to do, but he still hasn't given up.
Keep going.
That's it. In fact, he's got a brother starting out next year, so
nice. Okay.
I hope he continues in the same kind of
that's really
tradition.
cool. So what I'm picking up from you, which is really interesting, is you obviously weren't an educator by trade, and you haven't taught in a class or necessarily. I mean,
no. I'm not a teacher or educator by trade. I'm a physio, but I did do some lecturing in the UK, in physiology at the university there, which I love doing. And then I'm involved a little bit, and I do a little bit of anatomy type lectures in our PE classes and stuff. Just because I enjoy it, and I think it's important for kids to know a little bit about their bodies and stuff. But I'm not a teacher in the classroom as such.
But what I find, what's really interesting about the way you speak and the passion you have for this, not only this place, I think that's obvious because you came here and you've taken those values similar to Michael. What you learned, you carried through life, and I think you're right, it's going to carry these boys through. But I've met so many educators who I've always felt an educator position is a calling. It's definitely a calling. I think what I'm sensing from you is so nice is that you've had this real world experience, and by real world I mean often educators they go to school, they go to university, they go back into school, and it's their calling and they do that, but they don't necessarily get to see the world along the way as much as other people have to do, and so sometimes they are a bit more sheltered. I mean, I might be offending some teachers, I don't know, but
maybe you're right.
It is I've worked in corporate, I've worked in education for 20 odd years, and I've always sensed that there is sometimes, I'm not saying all the time, but there is sometimes sometimes a crossover, and sometimes there's a disconnect with what but what they don't lack is this calling, this ability to, like you just explained, how you described your relationship and what you want for Michael is exactly what 99% of South Africa's teachers, how they're built. That's their calling. They want that for their children. Yes, they might not have had real world experience in terms of working at big corporates or being an entrepreneur and going up and down and seeing life that way. But that's not, I don't think that's the problem. I think what's so nice about it is that calling that they have. But what I'm finding what's so interesting with you is you've still got that calling of the educator. I can sense. I mean, if I didn't know you were a physio, if you hadn't told me that about yourself, I would have just thought you'd been a teacher your entire life. So it's really
I think there's so many.
Another
great thing about this place is there's so many different aspects to educating the boys. You know, so. I believe it's hell important, and I mean, a couple of nights ago we had an old boys, or it's called an old boys and parents evening, and we had a guy a couple of years ahead of me at school, so he's really old now. His name's Graham Dwayne. He's an incredible guy who's done a lot of like National Geographic recordings and diving with great white sharks and crocodile swimming and stuff. And he spoke to us up at Nottingham Road the other night about a trip he had in the Himalayas.
Yeah.
And him and a couple of guys had gone cycling in the Himalayas, and they'd been hit by basically a storm that hit Bay of Bengal, like
just locked them in type of thing.
They were snowed in. And
wow.
I mean, I think there were about 30 hikers that were killed in avalanches and stuff, and these actually made it out. 3 South Africans and a Canadian that dragged along with. And I just sat there listening to his talk. It was a great talk. I knew when I was in Durban after school, we mixed a bit and that, and just listening to them speak, and it made me feel so proud that the school has produced people like it has many schools, every other school, and you talk about schools, we'll get back to that, but it's produced some amazing people. But having that guy come talk to us will and talk to parents, talk to boys, will actually often light a spark in someone's life greater than Shakespeare or Newton's laws. Don't tell your cousin I said that. No. But actually it's a massive part of it, and that's something that we're so lucky to have here. We've got so many people. Every school's produced, South Africa has produced amazing people all around. Yeah. You look all over the world. I mean, we've got a couple of oaks in America doing big things. Wherever you look, we've produced amazing people. But the one lucky thing about this school is that many of them come back, and give back to the school. So you look at those houses. I've said a Rafe house. That's an old boy who the school meant so much to him, that he gave back to the school, exactly the same McCormack and others. They've given back to the school in their own little way, because the school meant so much to them and it helped them in their footing in life. And that for me is part of where we're so lucky. This is my old boy's tie, this is an old community tie. So my dad was a St. John's boy. Because he was an old boy, he couldn't get a Michaelhouse tie, he got a community tie as a parent. And he passed this on to me. So I'm wearing that today, but basically, to be an old boy you have to attend the school, but the old boys of the school, they're a big tribe. I think there's, I don't know, near on 10,000 or whatever, and for so many of them, that the school means so much to them that they want to give back to the school and to the boys that will have to pass through the school in the next, call it Serengeti crossing. And I think what's important for me as well is to understand that we're only here for a short time. You tell the youngsters, tell them this is all dinosaur on about. But when the circle of life happens and you see your own kids going through school, and now you worry about the homework, and you worry about this teacher's horrible to them, this coach doesn't know how to pick them, but they keep going, all of a sudden they spat out the other side and they're done, and they're hopefully off to university or working somewhere, and the time has come and you're getting old and moving on.
Yeah.
So you've got to sort of maximize your time while you're there, because it will end, and only when we get older do we see that. But when you're lighty, you're just worried about, is the cricket rained off, or I've got maths tomorrow and how am I going to do, or whatever it might be. But actually you realise there's a bigger picture along the way, and I think that's a big thing for me, is realising that, and maximising your time while you're here. And I've had to adapt my ways big time since arriving, because coming out of basically either running your own practice, which I did in London and in South Africa, as well as working in high performance sports, where actually if you lose, you can lose your job.
Yes.
To come to a school, it was a bit of a shock, and I think, I know I've had to adapt my ways a bit, and I'm still as competitive as I ever have been, and I want to win, but I want us to win, but you realise that there are other important things to playing sport, and you want boys to learn the right lessons and the right work ethic, and that's kind of what we're doing here. We're trying to build through hard work. We're trying to improve by discipline. My old HK or PE teacher is actually the guy that called it HK. It's Gordon Patterson. He's a PhD in education, lives in New Zealand now, and he came to the school and I showed him, this was our old gymnasium with the ropes and the bars and stuff, and wall bars and a wooden horse and stuff, and I showed him this place, and he's like really chuffed. He's an exercise guy, a big sportsman, and I told him we're going to call it the High Performance Centre. You're always unhappy with me, and he said, this is a school, it's not a sporting institution. And I said to him, no, I agree with you, but I said the reason why we're calling it the High Performance Centre is it's not just a gym, and I don't want people to think of it as bicep curls and bench press and substances or whatever. This is a place where people exercise, but there's a medical centre here, there's a classroom over there, there's cardio studios, but actually the high performance for me is actually about the behaviour. It's the being on time, it's tidying up after you, it's replacing your weights, 100%, and that's actually what we're trying to do, because for me, winning is a byproduct of hard work. You can get everything right and you can get a bad decision from an ump. You can do everything right and get a bad bounce of the ball. You can do everything right and come up against, who might be Andre Jabeur, he's going to run around you.
Best in the world,
it happens, Christian Cullen, whoever it might be. So you can't get all right, but it's the life habits, the skills that you develop, and that's why we call that. So he did forgive me, I think.
No, I think you made a fair point there.
But that's actually the point. It's about that, and for me to have the boys coming through here. We've got. You look at the guys downstairs. You're looking at guys that will be targeting 4, 5, 6 A's plus in matric.
Yeah.
I had a call from a guy who heads up rugby at Notre Dame University in the States, and our captain from 2018, who got honours for rugby and academics, is one of the main dudes in their team now. And this guy said, "Have you got any more of these kids?" So we've got lots. And he said, "Well, can you get them here?" I said, "I'm sure a lot of them would love to come, but not everyone has US dollars. Might be Michaelhouse, but that's US dollars." So he said, "If you've got strong academic boys that play rugby, then we can try and help." I said, "Well, what do you mean by strong academics?" He says, over 80% aggregate. So I looked at our June results, and 7 of our matrics in the team, I think there were only 9 or 10, had got over 80% in June, and 3 of them got over 90% aggregate in June. So I mean, you're talking about
high performance.
It is high performance, and very different to when I was here.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
now it's cool to get A's and be in the first team. Now it's cool, to sing in the choir or play in the saxophone or member in the band and be a first team rugby player. So that for me is we're much more all round. I feel now it's a big focus of us is to be an all round kid, because for me. Look at our most famous son, probably most loved old boy. He was SS Schools cricket, SS Schools rugby, head boy, wonderful rugby player, boom, a couple of bad nasty bangs and career ends, but he's still a Daka Oak, and he's still going to make a success of his life, and where he works and his family and stuff, he comes back and coaches at the school for free here, and he's happy to, and for the boys to have a guy like a Pat Lambie coming back, it's an honour, but he's happy to come back on his own time.
It's almost like an honour for him as well. He'll know that he wants to pass it on, because if he got the opportunity, he knows the guys
what it means
before
to
you.
others,
Like
yeah.
that sardine run thing, it comes in the
Yeah.
next wave, takes the next
100%.
wave.
Yeah. I mean, I remember reading Sean Fitzpatrick's book, and he reckoned he decided he wanted to be a rugby player
Yeah.
when he watched that 1973 Barbarians All Blacks game.
Okay.
So I kind of wish you didn't have TV then, because it became a nuisance to us.
Yeah.
But for me, the day that I really got excited, I love my rugby, but the day that I really got excited was the day Ian McIntosh came to my class in 1986.
Yeah.
I remember him, and like that got me fired up, you know. So we had Mats Wilander come here when he's a world number one, and unfortunately my tennis didn't progress quite as well. But
That's still
you know, it's
meet the
amazing.
legends.
Yeah. So his wife was an auntie of the guys at school with us. Yeah.
Wow.
So to have something like that, it can spark something, you know, whatever it might be, whether it's Graham Dwayne talking to the boys, or you know, Jason McCormack chatting to the boys. Like, you know, you have these people that can inspire people, you know, and spark off something in a kid, and that's a big part of what I think we do here. So it's a long way away from a rugby conversation, but for me, rugby is something. Yes, I want us competitive. We'll do it in different ways. We'll do it through hard work. We'll do it through discipline. We'll do it through teamwork. We'll do it through hopefully improving our skills. Yeah, I think we'll produce better rugby players. We'll produce hopefully clever rugby players, but also hopefully guys that love the game and appreciate the game, and hopefully continue playing afterwards. So.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a rugby guy myself. I mean, I was very fortunate to travel the world as part of a Nike Springbok at the time. So similar to you, I got to work with my heroes. You know, players who were Oliver Roos were all still, they were all still playing. So I had that benefit. But for me, beyond all of that, why school meant so much to me in the sense that I got to high school and I had never really had a chance to be anything successful at primary school. I was the B team and everything. My brother was really talented in sports, so you see older brother and you like want to be like that. But I was I was the most frustrated footballer, goalkeeper, because I was short and a bit stumpy and I couldn't get the height right. But I loved it so much. And I didn't want to play rugby because I was like, that's not my game. I'm a footballer. I want to be like my brother. And my dad said to me, no, you will go to rugby practice. My dad never played rugby in his life, and he was like, you will go because you have to try everything before you can make a decision. Try it out. You can't say no until you've tried. So go down. And oh man, within the rules of the game, you could damage people. And I was like, I was like, I took all my frustration on. And I was just, and they were like, yeah. You can work with this guy, he has no fear, and yeah, obviously straight into the front row, middle of the front row where you stick the crazy people. That's it.
Come off an hooker.
Yeah, hooker, yeah. And I was put in a hooker and I thrived, and it changed me as a person. And this is not a rugby talk because it's not what it's about, but rugby and school in South Africa is such a big part. I mean, it's no fluke that South Africa has won World Cups and has produced Siya Kolisi, Lukhanyo Ums, Francois Pienaars, we can name them for how they could stay all day and name them, because of the values that their schooling and their rugby, the synergy between their schools and their rugby, and it's not saying that schools that don't have rugby are bad, but sports like rugby are the values of the game and the values of passing down tradition and knowing hierarchy and knowing that there's always someone bigger and stronger than you out there. No matter what you do, that you think you're the greatest and you're going to get knocked back down to your place at any moment, just brings this respect to your community like nothing else. And again, you know, every sport has those type of elements, but I find often, like you were saying now, like this high performance. The boys, when the lightning went off just now in the cricket game, the first thing they came up and put their bags down and they went to the other physio here, the other coach, and they're like, so can we do a couple sets while we're and he's like, no, you're playing a cricket match. He's like, yeah, but the game's broken until can we do some sets while we wait for the game to start again? And I was like, that means they're loving, they want to be here. Like, and I think what you guys are doing here is just, I drove in and it's phenomenal.
Very lucky, yeah. I think we're very lucky, and I think you're very right with the point about schools. I think schools, our strong schooling system, I think, is what's kept us afloat in many ways, certainly in sport, and in other areas as well. And the other thing I'll tell you, and you'll know this, if you've been around and you've travelled a bit, is when you live in the UK. someone might ask your name, and at the end of that sentence, they'll ask you what school you're at.
Yeah.
It's a big South African thing,
Mm.
and as you said, going to a nice school doesn't make you like any better than anyone else. But we place a huge emphasis on our schools, and obviously I was blessed to be able to come here. And if you come here and you don't maximise your time here, then you have really wasted your time, probably with folks' bucks, and wasted opportunity. So yeah, it is a massive thing. And interestingly enough, I mean, you mentioned working with Jeppy, and I know, I mean, giving back. If you look at what Dale Jackson's done there, it's a phenomenal story. And another Jeppy old boy who I know the school meant so much to him was one of the guys I worked with at the Sharks, was old Jake White, and the schools meant so much to him. And I don't know if you remember, but he took a team photo with his 2017 for the World Cup where they all wore their school kit.
Jerseys, yeah.
And I mean, because obviously school was a massive thing for him, and he's a proud, like, Jeppy old boy, you know. And he really put a big emphasis on that, and you know, almost to the point where if a guy was from Grey Bloom, he'd definitely be a good player, you know, as opposed to a guy at Grey Bloom might have been on the back end of a really good back line. So most of the time it would be good anyway. But for me, it is a big thing, and I think it's what kept us going. It's kept us going in sport when a lot of other things beyond school have actually
and
faltered.
the society, you just get the sense that our schooling system, and I mean, even if you look at it's like another alarm for.
I think that may be time to
wrap it up.
Our cricket match.
Look, I'm going to do another session with you on another day, if that's okay. I mean, it could be in a week's time, a year's time, but this is awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for the time.
Thanks for your time.
Sorry,
but
to everyone, in a gym,
going.
there's cricket and all kinds of things happening. But
thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
So this is